Hey everyone, welcome back. Today we are doing day 3, Introduction to Conditional Statements in C++. So for the past few challenges, we learned how to use different data types and how we can use arithmetic operators on them. It is a good time for us to explore an additional concept, conditional statements. Like its name suggests, conditional statements are used to execute specific parts of code if a certain condition is met. And this is perfect for this kind of task as we have over here. So for this task, we're given 4 conditional statements, and we are supposed to use conditional statements to check for these conditions that is specified over here. And if n is odd, print weird. If n is even and is within 2 to 5, print not weird. N is even, inclusive range of 6 to 20, print weird. N is even and greater than 20, print not weird. So in this case, we are going to use if-else statements to check for these conditions, and if that is true, we will see out the output accordingly. So for each input, we are given a number, and given this number, we will need to do some checks and we will print out the weird or not weird statements accordingly. So with that, before we get started, let's go through some boilerplate checks as well. So HackerRank is really nice to generate the boilerplate to get the input and cast it into an integer for us. So just for the sake of completeness, in this case on line 12 and line 13, we use the same method of reading in a temporary n, which represents an integer, but read in as a string with getLine first. And HackerRank used the same tactic to convert this string to an integer with stoi. Before it does that, of course, there's some left and right trimming, but that is just to remove the white spaces on the left and right of the string. So we get back an integer on line 15, and we are supposed to do some checks on line 15. So with that, let's get started. To initialize a conditional statement, we'll be using an if keyword followed by round brackets. And these round brackets over here represents the conditional statement to check. So this conditional statement should represent a boolean in this case, or it can be an integer as well. So if you have a conditional statement that returns, let's say 1, 2, 3, 4, that will still be evaluated as true. Anything that is not 0, which is an integer, will be taken as true. So in this case, let's say one way to quickly check for whether if n is an odd number is using this modulo operator and modulo it by 2. So modulo is an operator that gives back the remainder after you take that number and divide it by a specific number. So in this case, the number is 2. So let's say you take 3 modulo 2, the remainder will be 1, and this condition will be equals to 1. And 1 is taken as true, so in this case, this will print weird if we see out weird. And just so you know, a more verbose way of expressing this to evaluate this integer to a boolean instead is by using this equal operator to check whether if the left side is equals to the right side. And if n is equals to 3, this will evaluate to 1, and 1 is indeed equals to 1, giving us back true. But as we discussed earlier, if you return a number, if this number is larger than 0, then it will just be taken as true. So the equal over here is really redundant. So I'll be removing that. So once we're done with the first check, the next thing is to go through the second check. So the second check is whether if n is an inclusive range of 2 to 5. So to concatenate conditional statements, we can use else if, followed by the second conditional statement to check for after the first check on line 17. So in this case, we have 2 conditions. The first condition is to check for whether if n is less than equals to, is more than equals to 2, and n is less than equals to 5. See out not weird. There is a way to simplify this conditional statement actually because of elimination, but we will go through that in a bit. So, but I hope that this demonstration explains how we can concatenate 2 conditional statements using the double N operator over here. So next we will do the same, and in this same fashion, we are checking for whether if n is more than equals to 6 and n is less than equals to 20. See out weird. And for the final statement, n is even and greater than 20. Actually, by line 23, if we pass through 17, 19, and 21, we're guaranteed that n is going to be even and greater than 20. So instead of using else if and followed by that condition, I will just be using else and print out not weird. Okay, I missed out this end line on line 22, so I'm adding it back. And with that, this is pretty much it for our implementation. Let's run this against some test cases and more test cases. And this passed all the test cases. Some additional notes: if you wish to use OR operators, in other words, execute this code if either this condition or this condition is true, you can use the double vertical pipe operator to concatenate two conditions, but in an OR way. We won't use it in this exercise, but this is for your future reference. So another thing that we mentioned is that we could have simplified this further. And what do I mean by that is, imagine that you're on line 17, and as we discussed, the constraints is for n to be between 1 to 100. So if you reach line 19, and by line 19, you know that your number is guaranteed to be even. And what this means is n is going to be 2 and above. It's guaranteed to be 2 and above. So what this means is this condition for whether if n is more than or equals to 2 is really redundant. And in this case on line 21, that's the same, because if you are able to pass line 17 and line 19, it means that n is guaranteed to be more than or equals to 6. So actually we didn't need this condition as well. But we added it earlier because that was a nice chance to demonstrate how we can concatenate two conditional statements together with the AND operator. So with that, let's run the code again and let's see if this implementation works. So with that, that's pretty much it. I hope this was useful, and if you like it, please give us a like and subscribe, and we will see you in the next video.